Welcome to This Week in Surgery Centers. If you're in the ASC industry, then you're in the right place. Every week, we'll start the episode off by sharing an interesting conversation we had with our featured guest, and then we'll close the episode by recapping the latest news impacting surgery centers. We're excited to share with you what we have, so let's get started and see what the industry's been up to. Hi, everyone. Here's what you can expect on today's episode. Nyleen Flores, CEO of MedElevate Solutions, and Shannen Reyes, President of Advanced Quality Compliance, are both on today to talk all about provider credentialing. Nyleen and Shannen both have decades of experience with credentialing and have helped countless surgery centers better organize their credentialing processes, ultimately helping them mitigate risk and keep patients safe. Together, we'll go through common misconceptions and the best systems and tools to use for credentialing. And if this isn't enough credentialing info for you, we'll also cover the new podcast they recently launched together called Credentialing Chronicles. After my conversation with Nyleen and Shannen, we'll switch to our data and insights segment. You're likely familiar by now with our full State of the Industry report, but we recently released 12 new benchmarking reports that are shorter, solely focused on the data, and take a deeper dive into one single specialty at a time. So today we're spotlighting cardiovascular ASCs. So I'll walk through 10 key metrics from 108 CV centers that represent roughly 9,100 unique cardiovascular cases. I hope everyone enjoys the episode, and here's what's going on this week in surgery centers. Nyleen, Shannen, welcome to the podcast.
Hey.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Can you please tell our listeners a little bit about yourselves?
Yes. So I'm Nyleen, and I have been in the ASC space probably for the last 6 years or so. Used to run a surgery center. I've been doing credentialing for about 17 years and met Shannen about a year ago. And so we became fast friends and decided to do a really fun endeavor together since we are in love with this thing called credentialing. Shannen, what about you?
I've been in credentialing same for about 22 years. Came out of corporate America and opened up my CVO this year. Our CVO celebrating 10-year anniversary, women owned, baby, NCQA certified, all that good stuff.
Congratulations. That's awesome. So, given all of that expertise, can you please give us the 30-second overview of what credentialing is?
So, credentialing, that's a lot in 30 seconds, only because the word credentialing is actually used for different kinds of credentialing. So, there's
All
credentialing that a lot
over.
of people know, with like insurance companies. So, you have to credential with an insurance company to enroll, right? So, it's like an enrollment, it's called payer enrollment. And that has a credentialing process. And then there's credentialing where we are checking and verifying the credentials of the doctor that walks in to see you. Did I miss anything, Shannen?
Yeah, the latter is more done on the hospital surgery center approach. And it's just ensuring that the doctor has good peer references, good education, that those things can be verified, licensure, and that really looking for board actions, NPDB actions, things of that nature on the latter part of the credentialing that Nyleen is talking about.
Yeah.
Perfect. So, what are some of the most common misconceptions that surgery centers have about credentialing?
It's easy.
Oh, Miss. Yes. My software does it for me. I
Yeah,
have a
that's the big
database.
one. Yeah. I got sold this
Yeah.
expensive, awesome database.
Yeah, the computer does it for me.
Exactly. I
Yeah,
think really too that it's just that it needs care, it needs organization, it needs constant monitoring, and that's something that's very important in credentialing. And I think sometimes that's lacking, and it creates a little discourse.
sure. So, are there specific or just general kind of systems and tools that you would recommend for successfully tracking credentialing tasks, deadlines, all of that?
Well, obviously, if you have a CVO, they do it for you. So
Yes.
there's that option. You can hire a third party service to do it for you, or an agency that can run it for you.
Mhm.
So that's one option. The other option is having a database, of course, to monitor and alert you when things are expiring, things like that. But most importantly, it's really educating your administrator, especially in the surgery center world, and or the business office, whoever is handling the task that we are calling credentialing and verifying that a doctor is clinically competent to perform, along with your clinical leadership to ensure that they're reviewing peer review and ongoing monitoring of these doctors. So having a good system, processes, and then any software that can help you with that is obviously the best way to do it.
Do
And
you
I'd say keeping up too. You gotta keep up with it. It's
Yeah.
not a one and done. It's ongoing. Every month we're looking, tracking.
Sure. Do you find that is it possible? Doesn't sound like it would be a best practice, but is it possible for a surgery center to manage this in-house without any software or tools to support them, or not really?
Well, what we find is that a lot of people are doing that currently using an Excel spreadsheet document. That's what all of us used to use back in the day before all of the thousands of credentialing softwares came on board. And so, yeah, it's possible people are doing that every day, and software companies are beating down their doors saying, let me get you over to this software. But is it advisable? Depending upon your provider staff. If you have 5 providers, then yeah, it's completely possible. If you have, let's say you're tracking over 20 providers, you guys are anticipating growth, things of that nature, then at that point, you're going to need to go ahead and transition over to a software, and remembering that the software doesn't come with the support of managing the software. So you have to have a dedicated person, either outsourced or on staff, that knows your software, knows how it works, knows everything that's coming in and out of that software.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely.
Gotcha. So, if a center currently is behind or disorganized with their credentialing or just has concerns, what is the best way for them to get back on track? Where can they start?
Even like a company like Nyleen's, they look at messes like that.
Right.
And they say, this is what you should do. And then they advise after the assessment of say, hey, maybe this part you can outsource. Hey, maybe this part we can look at a different biller. Your biller's not really doing the best. And they really organize all that for you. That's the greatest approach. The other thing is bringing in somebody that's familiar with the credentialing world and being able to give you that assessment. I think a lot of times people think they know what's
Hmm.
going on, but then when they call all the payers and they realize that the person never submitted applications, they're getting denials, their AAA-HC is knocking down the door and they don't have files, it becomes a red fire alarm at that point. And you don't want things to get to that, my love. You don't want it, Erica.
Yeah, the last thing you want is a surveyor to come in and be like, "Oh my goodness, where is the NPDB before privileges were granted? Where's your privilege form?" So the problem is, if you look at the publications from the accreditors, so whether that's Joint Commission, DNV, ACHC, HHC, all these accreditors that are monitoring our surgery centers and we pay so much money to be accredited by, their number one deficiency is always credentialing when it comes to surgery centers. And that's because it's not given the level of attention. And again, I'm going to tell you 100% that's my opinion, even though it's proven with documentation. But let's just say it's number one, most ignored. And if you ask me, one of the most critical roles within a surgery center to ensure that we're providing best practice and safest care to our patients.
And I would listen
Sure.
to Nyleen because she literally has about 12 or 15 certifications behind her name.
You're so
So
extra.
I'm just saying, she is the certification directory of all certifications. So if you're going to listen to somebody, it would be Nyleen Flores. Okay.
Yes. Every time I go to tag you on something Nyleen on LinkedIn,
Yeah. Yeah.
I get all the acronyms after, but well deserved.
It's 3 sentences long, right, Erica? That's what
Yes.
I tell her all the time. But
I
we
love
love you and all your knowledge. And nobody else
it.
does that. Nobody else has that, Nyleen.
So, what are some of the biggest risks or consequences of poor credentialing practices?
There is a lot of crazy stuff happening in surgery centers because it's more of I'm your buddy, I'm buying in, I have rights because I own part of the surgery center, I can do whatever I want. And so
Mhm.
what happens is while we understand that physicians do a lot of training, that doesn't necessarily mean that an orthopedic surgeon can take out a gallbladder. Right? So surgery isn't surgery. So there has to be processes in place to not only check doctors initially, but check them ongoing. We can get into some juicy stories, but there's things that change. And that's why Shannen was talking about like ongoing problems.
Mhm.
Give you an example. A doctor
Mhm.
that's aging, he's a GI doctor, for example, he's aging and he went from not wearing hearing aids to having to wear hearing aids. Right. So that's a change in status that can directly affect patient care. And in the case of one doctor out of Florida, he ended up perforating a bowel because he didn't hear somebody saying something. So he injured a patient, right? Because there was a change, and that can all be tracked through credentialing and peer review. So
And
that's one
monitoring.
of the reasons, and monitoring.
Mhm.
So things change, education changes. The students and the doctors that are coming out of school now are learning very different techniques and equipment than doctors who've been practicing for 30, 40 years. So I don't know, Shannen, any other biggest
Well, yeah,
consequence?
I know. Nyleen's always going to talk to you about privileges all day because that is her passion.
I love my life.
I know, yes. I'm going to talk to you about monitoring and background checks and making sure sanctions and making sure that, yes, you do a background check when that provider first comes on. But there's a lot of people that don't, like Nyleen said, this is my buddy. They come in and we've known them forever. But then you find out you do a background check, they've had DWIs or whatever that is. You start seeing patterns of behavior that can directly affect your surgery center. And then you unknowingly, right, because you're not doing due diligence, are bringing in a risk to something that you're trying to grow very hard. And you don't want to do that. And so that's what I say. I say, do your initial background checks, which are very important. But every time on recredentialing, background checks should be included as well because things change in that area. And you want to know the risk that are in your surgery center.
Sure. Those are such interesting examples, like especially the hearing aid. I would never even consider something like that being part of credentialing. Just think, are your licenses up to date? You have all your credit. Are we good there? Kind of
Mhm,
what sounds like
mhm.
most people think. You're just checking the box and you're not really
Right.
thinking of all these other
Mm,
criteria that go into it.
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. So you guys recently launched your own podcast, Credentialing Chronicles, to cover this. Why did
Yes.
you feel it
Yes.
was important to do so?
All right, Shannen, you start off.
Yeah, definitely. I love credentialing. And the one thing about credentialing is that we are all held, all medical staff professionals, that's what we fall under, are held to a very high level of confidentiality and privileged data. And so, because we're held to those very high standards, there's really not a way or an avenue to talk about it. You really can't go to your husband and say, "Oh my God, guess what this doctor thought?" He don't understand what you're talking about. You really can't disclose any names, and so it just becomes like this loop of just keeping it in your head and just moving on with your life. But at Credentialing Chronicles, we decided that Eileen and I could talk about situations that help medical staff professionals, number one, because we can talk about cases that have been adjudicated or public finding records. So they're not actually providers that we've credentialed, they're all public records. So nobody can ever say, you guys are out here giving confidential information. And then with that case or that episode that we're talking about, we try to break it down into how does this help medical staff professionals? How does this help providers? Because if a provider gets caught up in something, has to disclose something, how do they go about that? That's a very sensitive topic. And then on the other hand, and the most important hand, how do patients protect themselves? And you see the doctor coming out of Columbia University that the university's had to pay $750 million because of what he's done to female patients. We literally are covering that on episode 9 coming up this week about how he did this and what he did. And Eileen really just throws out all the tea, all the gossip on that case. And then, but again, we wrap it up at the end on how we can really help.
Yeah, and the thing is, if you go even just through our first few episodes that we've done, one of the examples is like drinking while intoxicated. We highlight the example of, look, there's a doctor who didn't
Mhm,
survive getting a DUI. In other
mhm.
words, it was life ending, career
Changing, yeah.
ending anyway, changing. And then you have a doctor who did all the hoops. And so we go through all these hoops that she had to do in order to
Mhm,
go back into a doctor in good stand. And then
mhm,
we give you an example of a current case of a doctor who
mhm.
just got arrested. This is everything she had to do, and the doctor was arrested at 6 and she was at work at 8:30. You can't make that stuff up.
Wow.
So
Mhm,
yeah. So this is the kind of stuff we want to talk about. But most importantly, we want to bring awareness to the
mhm,
fact when you walk into an emergency room, when you walk into a surgery center, you
mhm,
feel confident that the doctor you're going to see, the doctor that has a white coat on or
mhm.
scrubs, is really qualified to do what they say. And there's a group of people out here that have been trained and
Yes.
study and
Yes.
get certifications to make
Mhm.
sure that we're doing this according to all the regulations, all the federal regulations, all the
Exactly.
state regulations, and the accrediting bodies to make sure that you, as a patient, are safe. So we wanted to create a safe space to gossip about it, make it fun, but also make it interesting and learn. And
Mhm.
hopefully, the public learns something
Yeah,
and we get everyone engaged into this beautiful, most amazing thing called credentialing.
exactly.
I love it. So, putting my patient hat on, if I do know I'm going to have surgery in a few weeks, is Google my one and only friend here, or what other services do I have to make sure the doctor is credentialed?
Great question. Number 1, whatever state you're in, you're able to go to that medical board and actually look up your doctor. And so number 1, you wanna go there and make sure that your doctor, it's a simple name search, you don't need a lot of information, and you can see, does your doctor have current board actions, past board actions? Again, not all medical boards play by the same reporting statutes, but it's a good start. The other thing, go ahead, Nyleen, what else do we talk about on the show?
You're the one who showed me, which I didn't know about this. So talk to her about the Google alert because I think that's the coolest thing ever.
Yeah, that's the other thing is the Google alert. When you go in there, any doctor that you're seeing, you want to Google alert the practice name, the doctor, and if he is or she is found in a DUI and it does come out and they have the body cam footage of your doctor taking a sobriety test, you'll be able to see that because that'll come out on YouTube and you'll get that Google alert.
Hey, and I'm just saying arrest records are completely public. If
Yes.
you go to your county, if you go to your county and you type in a name, it'll
Mhm,
come up their arrest records. So you can definitely search that. The other thing is too is don't go by the first page in Google. So there's a doctor right now that if you Google him, first page of Google has everything positive, all of the, oh, he's a wonderful doctor. And when you get to page 2, you find out, oh, there's actually like 19 open lawsuits against this person. So it's really interesting that you can do that. And just remember, these are public and you can get any case that's settled and it's public. You have the Freedom of Information Act or whatever. You can get anything that you want.
thing,
Perfect.
Erica, I'd like to add really quick is about plastic surgeries. You all make sure you go out there and check their board. Like not the medical board, but their
Yes.
board certification. That is a free verification. And you want a board certified plastic surgeon, not these run by the night doctors that are you're seeing are killing people out there right now, literally currently.
Yes. Yes, plastic surgery
Beware.
bongs
It's
episodes.
crazy.
Plastic surgery gone wrong.
Yeah,
Well,
for
when you go
sure.
down the rabbit hole, Erica, it is Alice in Wonderland, and you are just taken aback by all the information out there. It's crazy.
Yeah, I can imagine. All right, we do this every week with our guests. What is one thing our listeners can do this week to improve their surgery centers?
Love your nurses that take care of you. Bring in something to your surgery center after you had surgery and you don't remember what happened. Just know that they took really good care of you. So go say thank you to the nurses and the team that took care of you.
And I would say y'all ain't gonna like my answer. I would say to do a random audit on your credentialing file.
Amen, sister. Okay, I'll double that one.
and do a random audit on your monitoring program. And I know that seems crazy. And I know it's like, what? Who wants to do extra work? But when you're really looking at it from an auditor perspective and from wanting to ensure that your compliance is up to date and that you're on point, that is the best thing that you could do for your surgery center, is to ensure that there are no credentialing issues, and that if anybody comes in there to look over your items, that they see that you take care of this department as well as you're taking care of the surgery and all the things that are done in the OR.
Perfect. I
Yep.
love it. Thank you both so much for coming on today. I really appreciate it.
Definitely.
Thank you,
Thank you for having
Erica.
us.
HST Pathways recently released 12 benchmarking reports, with each report taking a deep dive into one single specialty at a time, comparing data from 2023 to 2024. Using our own unique data set from our clients, we were able to extract data points so that anyone in the industry could compare themselves to their peers. Two quick disclaimers: we only pulled data from clients who gave us permission, and we omitted any extreme outliers. So today, we're focusing on cardiovascular ASCs. And this data represents 9,179 unique cases across 108 cardiovascular centers. Here's a quick summary of the 10 metrics we looked at. The first was OR block utilization. So utilization jumped from 27% in 2023 to 32% in 2024, which is a major gain. But even with that improvement, there's still lots of room to grow. Many top performing centers considered 70% utilization to be the ideal benchmark that they hit. While the numbers we're currently seeing are obviously significantly lower than that, it does make sense considering this is a newer specialty and physicians, payers, and patients are all still getting comfortable with doing these procedures in an outpatient environment. On the flip side, though, pre-authorization rates dipped from 26% down to 21%. That's concerning since missing authorizations can delay or even cancel cases. And it's a reminder that ASCs always need to verify and use integrated payer tools, which can help streamline this process and reduce denials. Another metric that we looked at was insurance verification. So, surprisingly, cardiovascular ASCs are outperforming the industry here significantly, boasting a 92% insurance verification rate versus a 78% industry average. So, that obviously means fewer financial surprises and fewer last minute cancellations. And really, automation here is the key. So, many centers are verifying coverage when the case is accepted, again the morning of surgery, and then at the beginning of every month to catch lapses as well. So this is really cool to see this 92% insurance verification rate, and I'm excited to look at next year's numbers to see if we could even get higher than that. And while we're mentioning cancellations, those are improving too. The cancellation rate dropped slightly from 21.4% to 20.6%. Obviously, that's very small, but we'll take it. It's a very encouraging shift. Patient decision is still the top reason, making up 44% of cancellations, followed by reschedules. So patient cancellations, to some degree, are very much so out of our control. But there are things we can do, especially in this case. I wonder if there was like a sub reason under patient cancellations, if it was concerns, like safety concerns, financial concerns, whatever it might be, because some of those patient cancellations maybe can be mitigated simply by more patient education or more communication. Again, some cancellations are inevitable, but others, like missing labs or scheduling conflicts, can be avoided with better systems and proactive communication. One pain point, though, was patient deposit collection rates. So those took a hit from 2023 to 2024, falling from 75% to 66%. That is a major revenue leak. So collecting patient deposits is hard, no doubt about it, but you can make it easy for patients to understand what they owe by texting and emailing very simple, straightforward estimates to them. You can also offer convenient ways to pay ahead of time, ideally 1 to 2 weeks before the procedure. All of that just builds trust and helps avoid day of cancellations. All right, let's talk billing. So, one of the biggest efficiency wins in the cardiovascular data that we saw was days to bill. So, days to bill dropped from 11 days post data service in 2023 to 8 days in 2024. That's a huge deal. Faster billing just means faster reimbursement. And this could potentially mean we're just seeing like a cleaner integration between EHR and billing systems, and maybe just a more disciplined approach to coding and charge entry. And that brings us to claim denials. So another win here, denial rates dropped from 18% to 15%. So still not perfect, but definitely trending in the right direction. Centers that track denial patterns and address them quickly are the ones getting paid faster and more consistently. So we really want to keep a close eye on these denial rates. Are there any trends? Why are things getting denied? Is it specific payers? Is it physicians? Is it procedures? And really, the more we can hone in on that, the more improvement we can see here. I do think with cardiovascular being an emerging specialty, there's going to be a lot of pushback and a lot of red tape, and these payers are going to make this as difficult as they can, unfortunately. So I think you really just got to keep a close eye on all of these metrics, but especially around like prior auth requirements, insurance verification, claim denials, all of that good stuff. And then on the revenue side, net revenue per case did dip slightly from $4,849 in 2023 to $4,733 in 2024. So definitely not a massive drop, but just one worth watching. Ongoing financial reviews and strong reporting tools can help keep this metric steady or even push it upward and just help you identify and fix these revenue leaks. Now, even with that slight dip, though, cardiovascular procedures, when it comes to net revenue per case, are still the second highest. So I think it's only total joints that is ahead of cardiovascular. So while we hate to see a dip overall in the big picture of all specialties, this is still significantly higher than the majority. And finally, case volume held steady. So cardiovascular ASCs are averaging 20 cases per month, which is consistent with 2023. Stability is great, but leaders should keep an eye on growth opportunities, especially as demand continues to rise in this specialty. So there you have it, 10 key data points that should help paint the picture of how this emerging specialty is performing. I know I flew through that pretty quickly. So if you're interested in more data points and use cases or just want to follow along, head to our website, go to the resources dropdown and choose either data benchmarks by specialty or state of the industry report to get your hands on even more data. And as always, I'll include all the links directly in the podcast episode notes so you can easily find them. And that officially wraps up this week's podcast. Thank you, as always, for spending a few minutes of your week with us. Make sure to subscribe or leave a review on whichever platform you're listening from. I hope you have a great day, and we will see you again next week.